Good morning and good afternoon and good evening to everybody who's joining us today, and welcome to this webinar which we're co-hosting today, I'm proud to say, with Coursera for Campus and MENAREES. I am Kirsten Williamson. I'm the founder and CEO of Petrus, a global design agency, and I'm going to be your co-host today along with my colleague Alaa Ashmawy, who will introduce in a moment. So first of all, just a few practicalities and then we'll jump straight into the topic of our discussion. Thank you to my fellow speakers and co-hosts for putting yourselves off mute with your cameras on. Brilliant to see you all here. Welcome to our audience. So this is the first conference webinar that we've held dedicated to topics in the Middle East and North Africa. And I'm really thrilled to see so many. We had over 100 people sign up and really more people from these regions than we've ever had before. So I'm really excited about that. I know that we're all missing opportunities to network and meet each other. Don't lose this opportunity. Please do see this as both a learning opportunity and an opportunity for exchange and sharing. So use the chat as much as you would like. We are delighted to see questions, comments, introductions, your experience, any resource that you'd like to share that's linked to the topic of the conversation. Please don't hesitate to use the chat exactly for that purpose. And then we can see who else is here and also make some connections as well. And let's not let the fact that we're traveling less than we used to mean that we're not able to connect and meet with others in our region. So please do make the most of that. And I'm looking forward to many questions from the audience. We will make sure that there is time for that during our discussion. The discussion is recorded, so you will be able to access that later. Of course, the audience names and faces are not visible, so just to reassure you on that point, but it does mean that you'll be able to share the recording if you would like to with other colleagues. Now, our topic today, increasing engineering employability in the Middle East and North Africa region among engineering students, and different ways that we can do that, included blended learning. We've all had all kinds of experiences of taking learning online over the last couple of years. And what I'd like to do today is kind of blend our experience of moving online with education with what's happening in the labour market, and this very, very significant discussion that we've got going about skills right now. What are the skills that engineering students need to learn? How can they learn them? And what needs in particular do employers have in the Middle East and North Africa? So we've got a fantastic lineup of speakers to discuss and elaborate on this topic with us. So I'm going to introduce the speakers before I hand over to my co-chair to give his perspective on the topic. So with us today, Dana Fawaz. Dana is Partner Development Manager at Microsoft. And I know that you'll know Microsoft needs no introduction, but for those of you who don't know about Microsoft in this region, Microsoft based in Dubai has over 300 employees from many different companies, many different countries, sorry. It's based in a prime area known as Internet City, and working in a whole range of different competitive industry leading roles, a lot of which are focused on sales and services. Dana herself is an engineer by background. She is Partner Development Manager by profession, and she says she's an innovator at heart, and we can see that from her experience. She's got a Master's of Science in Engineering with Innovation and Entrepreneurship from UCL in the UK, as well as a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering. She is passionate about startups. She worked at a venture capital firm. She co-founded the Microsoft-powered Startup Accelerator, the AI Venture Labs. She also sits on the board of advisors of the American University in Dubai School of Mechanical Engineering, and accomplished all that while still just part of the Microsoft graduate program. So really looking forward to hearing about Dana's experience and in particular her transition from the engineering student life to the engineering working life. We're also going to hear from Najib Hamouti. Just thrilled to have Najib with us. He is Head of International Relations and Head of the Career Centre at ESITH Morocco. For those who don't know, ESITH, l'École Supérieure des Industries de Textile et d'Habillement, a very focused school, but with a very, very wide range of different kinds of students. And Najib is going to tell us about the different needs that his students have, and also how they're adapting to meet the needs of employers in the region. Najib's held various roles at ESITH for over 20 years. Very notably, he was the 2021 winner of the Ernst & Young and Global Career Services Founders for Innovation Award, something that I know he and the school are very proud of. He is a career service specialist, and as head of the career service at ESITH, his mission is to give direction to the employability strategy of the institution. So we're really looking forward to hearing more from you, Najib, and welcome. Thanks for joining. We will also be hearing from Zahir Strauer, the Director of Partnerships for Coursera for Campus in the Middle East. Just brilliant to have you with us, Zahir, and really can't wait to hear your perspective. And this combination that you're bringing of industry and education and online learning is something that's quite unique, because Zahir has a background in supply chain management that spans nearly 20 years. And in the past 5 years, he's been supporting universities across the Middle East and Africa and Asia Pacific to integrate supply chain simulation programs with curricula that is helping thousands of students to learn real world and in-demand supply chain skills. He's a graduate from Cranfield University in the UK, and his role is really advising senior leadership teams at educational institutions to look at what are the different means and tools and solutions that they have to produce job-ready graduate talent. So perfect perspective to join our conversation today. Welcome to all three of you. And to introduce the topic, I really could not have picked a better co-host than Alaa Ashmawy, who I've worked with now for a number of years and really learned something, and I'm inspired every single time we have a conversation, Alaa. So I'm just thrilled that we have this opportunity to co-host the webinar together. Alaa is the Executive Director of MENAREES, President of Diriyah University in Egypt, and also brings his quite significant experience as a special advisor to ABET, the accreditation organization, and also as President of IFES, International Organization for Engineering Education, with a lot of work going on in skills and student employability. So maybe, Alaa, I can hand over to you just to kick off and tell us about what, why is this topic a key topic for the Middle East and North Africa? What do you think is important that we cover in our discussion today?
Thank you, Kirsten. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you're joining from. Pleasure to be with you here today. Let me start off by talking a little bit about MENAREES and what we're doing. I assume that most of you, or at least some of you, got the invite through our mailing list. MENAREES is the Middle East and North Africa Regional Engineering Education Society. It was founded in 2019, and due to the COVID pandemic, the activities of the organization have slowed down over the past year or so. When we founded MENAREES in 2019, it is founded as a nonprofit organization, as a regional branch of the International Federation of Engineering Education Society, or IFES. IFES is the umbrella under which all the engineering education societies around the world operate, or are members. They meet at least once a year at the annual conference. Societies like the American Society of Engineering Education, the South African Society of Engineering Education, Latin America, Australian Society, etc. And the main catalyst behind starting MENAREES as a regional branch of IFES is that that does not exist an engineering education society in the Middle East and North Africa region. So that's why we founded it. Tell you a little bit about what we've done. We've organized a conference in Dubai in 2020, right before the pandemic. Unfortunately, it just happened at the onset of the pandemic outbreak, so a lot of people had to cancel at the last minute, and the conference was, the actual attendance was not as expected. However, we turned it somehow into a hybrid conference. We had some of the speakers come online, and that's what takes me to what I'm going to talk about today, which is blended learning. I think the pandemic has changed a lot in terms of, has changed us in terms of what we do and how we do things in engineering education. As Kirsten mentioned, I am a special advisor at ABET, work as part-time staff member with ABET. And one of the things that ABET promotes is innovation in delivery, content delivery. Some of you might know that ABET was one of the first societies to accredit engineering programs that are fully online since 2012. It was a program at Arizona State University, and they do not differentiate between blended or hybrid programs or full face-to-face programs or online programs, as long as the outcomes and the program requirements are satisfied or the criteria are satisfied. We go back to the pandemic and how it's changed the higher education landscape. We realized three things. I think there are three things that we have to remember that at least caught my attention, and I think profoundly changed the way we do things or we think about engineering education in general. The first is that we realized that there is a new generation of students who grew up in the digital world. They have a short attention span. They don't like to read textbooks. They prefer to read snippets and small pieces of information from different sources. So the way they learn is profoundly different from the way many of us grew up and learned. We used to go to the library to check out a book. This book is available online now. They don't need the whole book. They can find that piece of information that they are looking for. And that has changed dramatically over the past 5 years, in the sense that we now see a lot of students that want to have a different learning experience. Maybe they can still get some material from face-to-face, but they still want to get some material in other forms, learning at their own pace. That's the first. The second, I think, lesson that we learned from the pandemic is full online programs are only good for a certain group of people. They only work with certain people. For example, in the Western world, we see people who are full-time working professionals who want to get a degree on the side, or people who have worked as, don't have a college degree, but have worked in a particular field for a number of years and want to pursue a degree. People who are stationed offshore in the military or with their companies and want to get a degree. Full online programs are okay. They work with this audience, but we cannot assume that every single person is going to rely on learning on working online and learning online and achieving the same outcomes that we expect them to achieve. So we need to go back. That myth that universities are going to disappear is gone. Universities are not going to disappear. Yet we have to change the way we teach. We have to change the way we deliver the content. And as a result of this, we're looking at blended learning or hybrid learning. The other thing that blended learning offers is what I call learning in context. Unlike face-to-face, the idea of having an online component along with a face-to-face component is there is interaction between the professor or the instructor and the students on one hand, and then there is another element that's added. There is additional information that comes from a different source, and that's the interaction between the student and the online content. And the student can bring that back into the classroom, so that discussion that involves three parties results in a much better learning experience. And the students then learn in context. In other words, they are introduced to the topic during the lectures. Maybe they're introduced to the lectures in a relatively theoretical or hypothetical or a dry context. When they go online, there are a lot of resources, whether they're directly embedded within the online course that they are learning from, or if they get their information from other sources that supplements and puts within context what they are learning in the classroom. So these are the three things. In terms of that we learned, I think, out of the pandemic. And that's why we're here today discussing blended learning. In terms of employability, there is a strong desire, there is a strong direction that companies, especially large multinational corporations, are taking, and that is to put in as much emphasis on micro-credentials and stackable credentials as they do on full-fledged degree programs. Micro-credentials are not very well defined yet, but at least we know that a lot of these micro-credentials, like a mini MBA, a mini diploma, a nano diploma, a micro diploma, whatever we call them, there is still not a common form for this, and we are working on this in IFES. Today is not the time to discuss it, but this is something we're contemplating. We're looking at very seriously how do we validate those micro-credentials. But stackable credentials also are the idea that a person who works for company X that needs a certain set of skills. They do not come from a traditional college degree, but they might take a module or a component from in one field and another component from another field and a third component from a third field and stack them together. The idea that a programmer might, who's going to work in a particular field, let's say for the nonprofit organization, would need to learn about programming, but would also need to know about human-machine interface, would need to know about how to communicate with different entities, needs to understand public policy, needs to understand political and economic constraints in a much more serious way than we teach it traditionally in a traditional engineering program. So with this, it became very important that we look at blended learning as a face-to-face component, perhaps a traditional program, but also supplementing this with a stackable component. That's the extra credentials that the students will pursue online. And I'm glad that we have Coursera with us today because they have been at the forefront of MOOCs and online learning, and they've branched off to a full-fledged platform that partners with the university, and I think this is with the universities. And I think this is a great opportunity for universities in the MENA region to learn about this and know what's available for them. Thank you, and I look forward to interacting with the audience later.
Thank you, Alaa. Thank you for those comments. There's really a lot to think about there, and I love the connection that you make between students, of course, behaving in a different way, but that also impacting the way that young people learn. And I actually wonder to what extent employers are ready to make that kind of change in the training programs that they're running too. Thank you for that introduction. And in fact, what I'm going to do is pick up straight away on the employer perspective by coming to you, Dana. I've got a few questions, and I'm sure that a lot of what Alaa said resonated with you in terms of your recent experience. I wonder, just reflecting on your own personal experience to start off with, you started your work in the Microsoft graduate program with other experiences as well. And I wonder if you can think back to, when you started and how you feel now. Do you feel that there's something that you really needed in the workplace that you didn't learn about when you were a student, that you didn't learn? And on the flip side, is there something that you studied in your engineering studies at different levels and you think, actually, I've never used that, not used it at all, and it wasn't useful for me? What's your experience been?
Thanks a lot, Kirsten. So I'm going to tackle this question. I'm going to answer it in two different ways. The first thing I would say is my experience in engineering is a bit different from a typical engineering student because I did branch out of the world of engineering when I started my career. So although I'm working in a tech company, my day-to-day job is quite business related. So I think when I first graduated my bachelor's, I did a bachelor in mechanical engineering, I noticed that there was a lack of business acumen for us as engineering graduates. So we know really well how to build prototypes and how to solve problems, but how to use these prototypes in the real world, turn them into business model or assess their market viability, that was a huge question mark for me, at least back in the day. This curiosity for me was so big that I decided to pursue a hybrid master's in order to build that business acumen, which is what led me to do my master's in both mechanical engineering with a touch of entrepreneurship and innovation. And I think this business acumen is very important for engineering graduates because as engineering graduates, we have a very diverse job pool waiting for us when we graduate. So we can work as engineers, but a lot of us notice that there are many other disciplines that like to hire engineers because of the skill set that we have from an analytical standpoint. So consultants usually hire engineers, investment bankers usually hire engineers. So if we are looking to branch out of the engineering world with our engineering skill set, it's very important. I think that business acumen was a huge one that was missing that I had to go pursue and build separately. A second thing that I felt was missing and that engineering schools don't necessarily focus on a lot is self-awareness. And I'll explain what that means, but first by taking a couple of steps back. This is something I learned from my hiring manager at Microsoft, and he hired most of the young talents. So I asked him a question about what do you look for when you're hiring young talent? And he said that he looks at three main pillars: motivation, so a person's innate motivation, and this is something that is innate within a person, and you can't change that. So he looks at the match of their motivation to the job responsibility. The second thing that he said is their personality and how well that will suit the job responsibility and the team. Again, this is something innate within a person, possible to change, but very difficult to change. And he said the last thing he actually looks at is skill and knowledge, because this is something that can be easily built and shaped within young talent, especially fresh graduates. The way that engineering education is built today, I think, is mainly on a focus on skills and knowledge, but it doesn't really build the self-awareness of what the other two are. And that's something Microsoft actually tackles throughout their graduate program. They make us take an assessment early on to be able to build that self-awareness. Maybe to answer the second part of your question, is there anything that I've learned that I didn't use at all? I think in my case, it would probably be all of the engineering theoretical knowledge, but I wouldn't say it was useless, because I think what builds our engineering skill set is the process of learning these difficult concepts. So it's the time management that it takes. It's the analytical problem-solving skills. And I think learning these difficult concepts is what builds this skill set. So I didn't necessarily use the knowledge itself. However, the skills to be able to capture and learn that is what I used on a day-to-day basis.
That's wonderful, Dana. Thank you for bringing those insights. And the description of self-awareness, I think, is only going to become more and more important for young people as they study and graduate and get into the workplace, because of exactly the topic that Alaa mentioned. In fact, stacking credentials. I think we're going to need young people to identify more and more what do they know already, what do they need to know, and what is going to be the best route to learn that thing. Is it going to be an additional credential, some blended learning, a work-based experience, all of these different ways that each person's profile is developed to offer a set of skills and a set of experiences to an employer. Thank you for that introduction. I think we'll jump to the career service specialist now, really to hear from your perspective, looking after the whole cohort of students that you've got and the institutional employability strategy. Najib, what do you see employers in the Middle East, North Africa region looking for, and where do you see the gaps or the challenges for your students?
Thank you very much, Kirsten. It's my pleasure to take part in this discussion. Of course, we are living in special circumstances where economy and industry change rapidly, and when crises come and go, etc. So, what I see as the employers' expectations. I'll be having the pleasure to share with you the result of a study that we ordered with a consultancy firm, and this sums up to a great extent maybe the whole, or the whole view of employers in the MENA region. So most of the employers that were interviewed by the consultancy firm, of course, the target group was our engineering graduates who graduated 5 years ago, in the last 5 years. And then a set of qualities that were expected from these employers. We have we have split them into two kind of expectations. One expectation from the standpoint of human resources specialist, and then we also saw the standpoint of the executive managers. So from the standpoint of human resources, these qualities can be, expectations can be subtle into the fact that these recruiters, they are expecting our graduates to be more engaged and committed, more engaged in the values of the company they work for, are more engaged in what they do. And they also want them to have this eagerness to be always looking to improve themselves through learning. And they expect them also to have a good communication. And because most of these employers, although we have quite a set of Moroccan industry, but we have a lot of multinational companies, and these multinational companies, they expect you also to have mastery of two languages, which is English and French. So this question of communication comes in the terms of linguistic, if you like, prowess, but also interpersonal communication, the way you behave yourself in society in communication. So because most of our graduates, they work in the industry, manufacturing industry, so these employers, human resources managers, they expect them to, they want them to have the quality of good stress management, because you know, in manufacturing there are deadlines, production, breakdowns of productions, suppliers, managing stocks, etc. So this is also a very sought for quality. And of course, as Dana said, the analytical spirit, the ability to read things, read situations, and come up with the right conclusions and the right interpretations. And of course, they want employers or newly hired graduates to be disciplined. In industry, it's a very regulated sector, a lot of quality assurance, regulations, rules, etc. So they want the new graduates to really abide by the rules, and not. Of course, they will have some, if like, margin of creativity, but it is very important to abide by the rules in the industrial environment. From the standpoint of executive managers, here we have, if like, because these executive managers, they see more or less the big picture, so they would list some other qualities they expect graduates to have, like, of course, here the quality of, or the skill of communications, mastering communication comes again, but this executive manager add something to this one. They would like these young people not only to be good communicating orally, etc., but they also want them to write correctly. So writing is a sort of skill for executives. They stress also on team spirit. These young people should be team players, especially if you are in an industry, in a company with a high, if you like, with a big size of employers, and then all these employers sometimes are split into project teams or production teams. So it's very important to have the ability to work in a team. And this is also what we do. I mean, at AZIT, during their years of studies, we stress on teamwork. Students, they work on teams, on class, on projects, academic projects, professional projects, and this is a way to prepare them for the labor market concerning this skill. Of course, it goes without saying that we also want these young people to have a high level of integrity. It's very sensitive when you work in a manufacturing environment, when you are making, for example, spare parts for cars or planes. This is something very sensitive and of high importance. So you should have what we call also, if you like, work ethics. they expect you also to have a strong personality if you are newly hired in the company, and also motivated and ambitious. You always want to do more, propose more, think more, and be able to take initiative as well. So this is, in a nutshell, what my takeaway from that study. And of course, all these things that were cited by employers, they can be to a great extent maybe generalized to quite the larger area of the MENA region. Okay, over to you, Kirsten.
Thank you, Najib. There's a lot of food for thought there as well, and I'm just wondering, because when everything that you talked about there, a lot of that are really behaviors and professional skills that students need to learn alongside the technical skills that they're learning. How have you? Has that changed over time? Is there more of a focus now on professional skills and behavior than there used to be in the past? It certainly seems to be what the manager that Dana referred to was suggesting. And maybe to add to that, how's the university adapting then? How are you adapting to build these things into the programs that you're delivering?
Yes, of course, we are faced with great challenges. You know, one of the things that came up to the surface as something very important to us is the fact that we train our engineers to get hired in certain fields of the industry, but you know, you can't predict crises when they come. For example, now there is a crisis in the automotive industry, so in the last survey we did last year, 25% of our graduates were in the automotive industry, but now this industry is living a crisis. So this is why the lesson learned is that we train our students for some specific technical skills, and also we train them for soft skills, either in the classroom or in experiential education. But the conclusion on according to my own point of view, is that the best lessons learned is that we should equip our students with what my friend Ashmawy called micro credentials. A lot of micro credentials, maybe 2 or 3, and this is maybe one of the reasons that push us to do a partnership with Coursera. We equipping with micro credentials, and in this sense we are, if you like, allowing them to have a plan B in their career. So in case there is a crisis in some sectors, they have a plan B. And these credentials are very important also when it comes to those soft skills, which are a little bit hard skills. If to be more explicit about this, I will say, for example, project management. Many people won't list it as a soft skill, but I list it as a like soft hard skill, because not only engineers need it, but all students in different fields. Even, I don't know, in its industry of art, you need to master the skills of project management. For example, what we teach in project management might be too small, because we cannot teach everything. And this is where blended learning comes to fill in these gaps.
This is that you provided a perfect lead actually into my question for Zaher there. Thank you.
Sorry.
Because yeah, what you're talking about is making sure that students have options, and that the options that they have give them flexibility. And your soft hard skills, I call them professional skills, because you have to learn them, right? You don't just know how to do project management. It's something that needs to be learned, and that's just one example. So let's go to Zaher, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from you about, so what is Coursera proposing? I mean, how are you helping engineering schools in particular address these challenges of making sure that students have a plan B, have options, whatever the career market is offering?
Thanks, Kirsten, and very much pleased to be with you here. In fact, I cannot agree more with what Dana, Najib, and Alaa mentioned. And basically, I can't add much to that. The only thing that I can talk about here about the data that we have from our platform. So basically, as you may know, Coursera works with thousands of universities. We work daily with engineering deans in engineering schools. We work with millions of students, and primarily from the engineering domains, we are seeing a shift in learning, which has been accelerated from the since the pandemic. Historically, engineering students, they are not really much interested in multidisciplinary skills. Like if I'm a mechanical engineering or a computer science student, I really don't pay attention to what's happening in the marketing field or what's happening in the finance field. So what we're seeing on our platform, that students are very much keen to understand financial modeling, for example, or perhaps looking at project management and many other fields that they are not taking at the university. That's one side. The other side is that I agree with all of you about what we call in Coursera human skills. So basically, and this is what perhaps Dana's manager was looking for. They know, employers know that students are coming to them with adequately good knowledge in technical skills. But sometimes, and many times in fact, students are lacking the human skills, which basically employers are looking at or looking for in terms of problem-solving skills, the critical thinking, even the collaboration among teams, and many other things. What makes it even worse, the pandemic these days, many employees now are now looking for jobs remotely, and this is also this is an issue now for fresh graduates to compete in a very really unprecedented job market. Students this time they are really facing a double disruption. So the fact that automation is increasing, the companies, employers are becoming very, very picky in terms of selecting and hiring students. Perhaps they are looking for more, and this has been led by many big companies like Apple or Netflix and Google. They are now using the model of skills first hiring. So they ask the students, show me, or they ask the graduates, show me what skills do you have, or show me what you have learned perhaps, and what certifications you've got. And this is an area where we at Coursera is trying to support students, basically across two primary ways. The first one is related to career training. So me as a graduate, as a fresh graduate, I really want to have some credentials besides my university degree that becomes really attractive to the employers. And this is where Coursera, for example, here has introduced a lot of professional certificates as an entry level from companies like IBM and Google and Facebook and many others. The other thing here is about the specific skill sets. Like, for example, if I do have a background in software engineering, I want to show my employer that I really do have the skills that really validates my claim that I want to be a software engineer, or I want to apply for a job in, let's say, backend or front-end web developer. So Coursera in the last year introduced something called skill sets. These are kind of job-based learning programs. We started with the industry, with the enterprises, like banking sector, telecommunication, and all of these different industries. And we have brought the same concept to universities quite recently, and we're seeing a lot of traction at the university level. This is something new to universities. Universities, as the gentleman mentioned, very much used to theoretical and non-practical element of that. Now, universities are looking at this as a way to empower and to strengthen the career opportunities of their students. We are able to empower them with showing them what are the skill sets, or what are the skills, and what are the proficiency levels of these skills targeted for specific roles. I mentioned web software engineer. It could be a data scientist. It could be somebody who wanted to work as an IT infrastructure or anything in cybersecurity. So we have been really working hard with universities now to introduce this type of really revolutionary skill set methodology to add to support students. On the other element here, I mean, if we want to talk about blended learning, Coursera historically has been very much known within faculty as a tool for faculty members to bringing or to fill in the gap where the curriculum fails, especially for those emerging technologies, especially for those areas where universities in general cannot be at a high pace of producing the learning material. We've seen this across many universities, not only in the Middle East and North Africa. We've seen this even in the US, and we've seen this in areas like in India and Argentina. So basically, these are the use cases where universities and where students and faculty who are really who in most of the cases drive this blended learning approach. This is where we're seeing them benefiting from a company like Coursera.
That's great. That's great, Zahir. Thanks for that introduction. It's interesting to hear about the different approaches that are possible. Makes me think of a couple of different things. One is, do you think that are universities and also employers ready to adapt to the different approaches and the different tools that you're offering? And maybe from your experience, what do universities need to do to be ready to maximize the use of the different tools that are out there, and of course including your own? Are there any steps or any steps or any process that they need to go through to be able to offer this kind of thing to students in a way that will have an impact?
Absolutely. I mean, university, as you may see, I mean, it is a business at the end of the day. It could be a non-profit, it could be a public institution, but at the end of the day, if the university, as Dr. Alaa mentioned, if they don't adapt to the new things that's happening in the world, they will fall behind. I mean, students will, at one point in time, I mean, we might not be surprised the students might not be going to university because they might think that the university is not really equipping them to be job ready. And this is where many universities in the region here now, they are appreciating the fact that, yes, we do have to run fast like other companies, like the employers. And it starts with, of course, the leadership of the university, and they start to see where are the areas that we need to partner with companies, we need to partner with the industry to make sure that we are equipping and producing, graduates that are really, employable, or they're really attracted to the job market. So yes, it is. To many universities, we are still at the very early stages. The pace that universities are moving differ or vary, but we're seeing this in the region in the last couple of years, and has really accelerated due to the pandemic as well.
Thank you. And I'm noticing we've got a few questions coming in now from the audience, which is brilliant. So I really encourage you to keep posting there, either in the chat or in the Q&A. I'm going to come to one of those questions in just a minute. I just wondered, Najib, because I know that you've had a direct experience of also working with the Coursera platform. Can you give any comment on that? How has that been useful for the students, given the context that you've described?
Talking about Coursera?
Yeah.
Yes. So this is, part of the measures that we decided to take during the first days of the pandemic. It was necessary to adopt. It was Dr. Alaa and Zahir would not agree with me more than this, because that was everybody was taken by surprise when the pandemic came and we had to send students home and students and staff home, etc., to learn in distance. So that was really a challenge. So one of the measures, the reflection was that we should adapt, but so there were some immediate actions, but also some actions which were planned in a prospect of time. So one of the decisions made was to institutionalize the hybrid teaching mode. Hybrid teaching mode, in the sense that there are some parts of the courses which will be done in person and some parts which will be done online or at home. And this is where the matching with or the partnering with Coursera comes at the right time. So, as far as I remember, we have selected like 100 topics of teaching for our students. And here I congratulate my colleagues at the pedagogic department, because it was really a minute work to do, how to choose from all this plethora of courses which Coursera offer and make a matching with what we want to do, not only in terms of topic, but also in terms of time scope, because teaching is also bound by time. We have number of hours for a specific course. So where would you put Coursera module in a course which already exists? Of course, taking in mind that we are also working under the supervision of a ministry, and accreditations have conditions and regulations, etc. So all these constraints, we managed to do them, and also with the help of the Coursera team.
Okay, so that's a really tailored and adapt. I suppose that you've been working directly to identify which are the courses and work out how to adapt them into the programs that you've got. Let me come back to Dana for a minute, and then I'm going to come to the questions that we have in the chat. Dana, I'm just wondering now, from your perspective, rather as somebody experienced in the workplace now, what do you see among the fresh graduates who are coming into the workplace alongside you in terms of specific skills, either professional skills or specific technical skills? Do you see something that seems to be lacking that you think could be provided by this blended learning approach?
Yeah, maybe I'll take a technical skills and then professional skills, because I think it's important to address both. Technical skills, I'll take it from a Microsoft as well, but cloud computing is booming in the tech industry, and I think education systems are still playing catch up. So they haven't really integrated the concepts of cloud computing a lot into the computer science major. So what we see when we come to hire, we can find developer talent, we can find computer scientists, but we lack that specific skill, which is the cloud computing fundamentals. We do have our own certification tracks, but these are usually not embedded into the education system yet, at least not in the region. From a professional skills, I actually have an intern right now, so I'm starting to notice what are the skill gaps from fresh graduates. I think because they've been dealing with very structured education systems and very structured problems that have very structured answers, there's always one answer to a single problem. Dealing with ambiguity is a skill, I think, that students develop with experience. So naturally, when they come out fresh out of the education system, it's still not there.
All right, so that great cloud computing, a great example of a technical skill, and I'm sure that Alaa and Zahir and Najib could give us some more examples of some of those specific emerging technical skills that universities could be looking at to make sure that graduates can straight away jump into those gaps. Dealing with ambiguity. Now, I understand that experiential learning, for example, doing projects, challenges, society-based projects as well could be a good way of helping students learn about dealing with ambiguity, and I'm sure that there are some great examples there among the universities that are with us too. So if any universities have taken any initiative to help students develop that kind of professional skill, dealing with ambiguity in this world where there are many different moving parts. We talk about a VUCA world sometimes, volatile and uncertain and everything moving very rapidly. I'd be very interested to hear what examples you've got. There's a question I'm going to put to you, Dan, and I think it's a challenging question. So I'm very happy to hear honestly what you have to say. Somebody has shared that they're feeling a feeling of disappointment, in fact, that in the past a college degree was a big deal, something that was a flagship, something that was really celebrated and cherished by employers, and that this seems to be floating away. And Alaa, you alluded to this as well in your opening comments when you talked about the fact that universities are not going to disappear. So I'd be happy to hear your view on this too. But employers are rejecting students, and then when they hire them, they get overworked. They're underpaid. They're not in the right kind of positions. Now, you've had a few different positions, Dana. You're with Microsoft now. It sounds like you're in a great environment for learning. But perhaps you've seen this among your peers. How do you find the labor market right now? And do you feel that the value of a degree is something that's diminishing, or do you think that it could actually be enhanced by these new different kinds of credentials and so on? What's your view on that?
So a couple of things. I would definitely say a degree alone isn't enough. A degree needs to be complemented with a number of extracurriculars or additional certifications like Azure Fundamentals. I'm speaking from a Microsoft perspective, especially if you're going towards a very specific career path and you know what that is, you need to know what are the skills and additional certifications that you have to complement. Now, when it comes to the job market, I think if you're applying to every job out there on LinkedIn, you're bound to get frustrated because these are jobs that aren't necessarily tailored towards fresh graduates. Most of them are looking for experienced people. So what I would just, a piece of advice, almost all big corporates have graduate programs. And I think that should be the first place you should be looking. And one piece of advice I would say, don't be afraid to accept an internship, no matter how advanced you are. So I took an internship at Microsoft after I was already employed at a venture capital firm and I had a master's degree. And that's what led to me landing an actual role. So always take the opportunity to start as an intern and prove your skills, prove the value add you can, and also build that additional level of skills that's going to complement your degree before looking for a full-time thing.
Okay, so sometimes the expectation of the student of getting a great graduate job right off the bat, straight from university, is not realistic, and they're going to have to take steps and piece together in order to get to the graduate job that they.
I would add one more thing. You will make a couple of mistakes before you land the right one. So when I was in venture capital, although I loved what I was doing, I was overworked, underpaid, and decided I wasn't happy. That's when I quit and took the internship with Microsoft. So it will take a couple of tries, but don't be afraid to literally put your foot down and walk away if something isn't what you're looking for.
What I see is two very, very strong and positive messages coming out of that. And for the person who asked this question is, first of all, there are real areas where an additional piece of learning that could complement a full degree will really put you at the top of the edge on the labor market, because there, for example, are not enough cloud engineers. So there's an opportunity there. And it also makes me think back to what we talked about right at the start about self-awareness. And I think this is one of the things that universities perhaps could look at, how to instill even more in graduates. My experience is that universities doing experiential learning, where students are encouraged to reflect on their learning experience, can really develop their sense of self-awareness and what happened, why did it happen, what did I learn from that, what will I do differently next time. And if we can apply those skills of self-awareness to career pathways and say, okay, what have I learned already, what do I need to learn next, this also puts the tools in the hands of the students to engage and drive their own learning. But I'm going to come back. Thank you for your comments. That was really very helpful. I'm going to come back to Alaa with that question as well. Do you feel, Alaa, from your experience and the different organizations you're involved in, has the value of a degree diminished? And if it has, what do universities need to be doing about it?
Well, I think it depends on the organization that's hiring. There are still many organizations that are looking for a traditional degree, and I do think that the degree will still have value. But I agree with Dana fully that a degree by itself nowadays is not enough. You need to complement it with something else. You need to complement it with the skills that you need to be employable in the workplace. And to be employable depends on where you want to be employed. So if you graduated with a degree in civil or mechanical or electrical engineering, you could do something else that's not necessarily related to the core topics that you study. I remember a few years ago, we did with GEDC and IFES, we did a global survey of what skills do global employers look for. So when what we're talking about here is global employers. And it was striking because technical knowledge and a strong foundation in physics and math did not come up at the top of the list at all. And we were wondering why, and the reason is simple. A college degree provides you with the basic foundation. So somebody with a college degree will have accomplished the minimum level that's required of a college graduate, whether they graduated with flying colors or whether they barely graduated. Employers know that at least they have the basic skills. But in addition to this, what are the skills that are needed? And what came at the top of the list is number one, willingness to learn. Willingness to learn. It means that you need to be seeking knowledge after you graduate, not necessarily through formal college degrees, but through what we call stackable credentials nowadays, through things that programs that Coursera and others like Coursera offer. That's number one. Then we have the ability to work in teams. I don't think we teach this anywhere in our curricula. We put students in teams, but we don't really coach them on how to work in teams. And that's a critical requirement in the workplace. So if I go back to the question that was asked by our participant, is a college degree less valuable? To some extent, yes, it is than it was, 20, 30, 40 years ago. The reason being that universities have not adapted to the changes in the global marketplace and the requirements. Students needing to have the business acumen, engineering students needing to be equipped with this. It's not part of the core curricula at many places. So those universities that offer experiential learning experiences, for example, or curricula, these are the ones that are keeping up. And hopefully we're going to see more and more of this embedded and diffused into the engineering education in the region as a whole.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alaa, for those insights. That's great. And I will just add to that as well, when we look at these different perspectives, different needs of different employers, not to forget the small and medium-sized enterprises, which are the biggest employer in some regions, and offer some great opportunities for graduates as well. And I say that because, of course, I am a small and medium-sized enterprise employer and competing with the likes of Microsoft at times for the best talent. So don't forget to keep an eye out on the opportunities that can exist beyond the big name companies if your students are not finding what they're looking for. There's a great comment. So we've got just a couple of minutes. I'm going to ask you all just very briefly if you have one or two remarks that you would like to share to wrap up. There's also a question there about whether these skills are different in the Middle East and North Africa versus the rest of the world. I wonder whether, Najib, with your experience in the Global Career Services Summit that you participate in, you might comment on that. But just literally 30 seconds a minute from each of you. Be very, very happy to hear your final comments before we wrap up the very interesting discussion that we've had now. So maybe I can come to you first, Najib. Anything that you would like to add before we close?
Yes, thank you. Quickly, so if you compare the MENA region to the rest of the world, I would say that in the MENA regions, in terms of skills, learners are more under the pressure of learning foreign languages. So here they speak their own languages, for example, Morocco Arabic or Amazigh, but they also fall under the pressure to master English and French. Apart from this, I think all the skills are quite global. Yes, indeed. No difference between MENA or the rest of the world.
Okay, thank you. And I know that Corsair has done some research on that as well to see which employers are looking for different kinds of specific technical skills in different parts of the world. But of course, now that students can work globally, that is perhaps also something to look at, that you can be, your employability skills can be relevant wherever you are. Zahir, over to you. Anything that you would like to add before we wrap up?
Yes, so basically, I think universities have to listen to the employers. I know that many universities, and I talk to them every day, they have established industry relationships with the industry. So if you go to any university now, they have established these partnerships. But I still believe that they have to listen to what employers need, and they have to bring this to their curriculum and something that Dana mentioned, and I agree with her a lot about for example, the cybersecurity or the cloud computing profession. These are the new digital jobs that are very in high demand, and I think universities have to consider where are the growth in demand is happening. Yes, there are students who are going to graduate in mechanical and electrical, but that's big growth. I mean, in fact, Microsoft anticipated that there will be around 150 million new jobs in digital and technical skills by 2025. And big numbers in cybersecurity, in cloud computing, and software development. So that does not undermine really the other disciplines, but in fact, at the end of the day, we don't want universities to graduate students to sit at home. I mean, we want them to be where the market is evolving and where are the economic opportunities happening, whether locally, regionally, or can be global employees or global workforce in their domains.
Brilliant. Thank you. Dana, I'm going to come to you, and then Alaa for a final word. Dana, anything you'd like to add to what you've just heard?
Yeah, just a quick piece of advice for any students on the call. Don't be afraid to reach out to any industry professionals over LinkedIn for mentorship on what skills you should be building in the career that you're looking for, and to any professors and institutes on the call as well. Maybe create the forum as well for the students to be able to reach out to industry professionals to sort of understand what are the skills that can complement what they're already learning. That's
brilliant.
pretty much it.
The alumni communities are a great, we often go to alumni for funding, right? But actually the contacts and the insight that alumni can bring can often be way more valuable than the funding that universities go to them. So don't hesitate to engage your alumni community. Alaa, over to you. From the perspective of MENAREES and your audience, does this resonate, and what would you conclude from our discussion as we wrap up today?
Well, I think it was a wonderful discussion, and I think the key takeaways are that traditional education in the way we used to teach things at universities 15, 20 years ago has to change. We have to think of embedding additional components within our curricula or within our programs to make our students or our graduates more employable. Going back to the question about what is specific about the MENA region, I can give two examples of skills that are needed here, soft skills. One of them is cultural awareness, and cultural awareness is in the sense that working in groups with people from different cultures, people from different backgrounds, is not necessarily something that is universal around the region. And that we need to work on this. The other one is negotiation skills, and when we're negotiating, in general, I'm not talking about negotiating pricing, but negotiation in general, and reaching compromises is something that is also a skill that I think is very important from an employer standpoint. I'm glad we had such a diverse panel and eclectic, coming from academia, from industry, and from the course providers. I'd like to thank everybody for participating, and thank you, Kirsten, for co-chairing this.
Thank you, Alaa. It's been a pleasure. And so it just leaves me to thank everybody. To wrap up our discussion today, as I said, it will be recorded. You'll be able to catch it later, and share if you would like to share any of what we've been sharing with your colleagues. I would just say thank you to Coursera for sponsoring this series. It's really great that we've been able to work together this year to bring these topics to the table and to gather these different organizations to share insights, and also the people who've been networking during the course of the year. Really great to have such a new audience as well this time. So thank you to the audience for joining. Thank you very, very much to the speakers. It was brilliant to hear from you. Dana, I hope that many on the audience will take up your offer of networking and connect with you on LinkedIn, as well as any of us. We would love to stay in touch. You can see on the screen that you'll get a feedback survey. Please do respond. Tell us what you thought of the session, and if there are any topics you'd like to see covered in the future, and also stay in touch. You can drop us an email if you want, if you'd like to speak, if you'd like to host, if you'd like to be involved in a future topic. You are absolutely welcome. So that wraps up for today, and it just leaves me to say it's been a wonderful opportunity to host this together with yourself, Alaa, and the MENAREES organization, and I hope that we have the opportunity to do so again. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the day, and if we don't have the chance to connect, enjoy the rest of the year as well. Stay safe and well and happy, and keep learning. Thank you. Bye-bye.